So hello, my name's Deb Fitzpatrick and I'm going to present a brief lecture on voice in creative writing. As you can see from the slide in front of you, I have written 6 books. These are all of them up here on the screen. They range for readers right from quite a young age, from about 6, 7, 8 years old, right through to adult readers. The book, The Break, was written for adults. The youngest book is at my door. I have 2 young adult books, Have You Seen Ali Queen and 90 Packets of Instant Noodles, and then 2 books that are considered to be for middle grade readers, The Amazing Spencer Gray and The Spectacular Spencer Gray. So, to the question of what is voice? Well, as I have come to understand it, voice really can be divided into 2 different sort of groups. Firstly, we can talk about the character's voice, and if a book has more than one character, which it usually does, then we're talking about characters' voices. So the character's voice is typically the characteristic speech and thought patterns of a character or a narrator in a work of fiction. The personality of that character and how this is delivered via the tone and style of their speaking and thinking is really how voice is conveyed. So we're talking all sorts of things from word use, tone, rhythm of language, and so on and so forth. All of those things together will help a reader understand the character they're dealing with, and that will be conveyed via their voice. Okay, so then to the matter of the author's voice. This, to my mind, is more a matter of the personality of the author as it comes through on the page. And it's determined by their language use, their word choice, the flow and rhythm of their sentences as a writer, and also the style of their writing, and to an extent their thematic interests. Okay, so they're the 2 basic definitions. Just to look into that in a little more detail, the character's voice communicates who that character is, where they've been, and where they might be headed. Their voice is what makes them unique and hopefully memorable. So they might be likeable or unlikable, edgy, placid, fast-paced, fast-talking, or languid speakers, and of course all the shades in between. You don't really want stereotypes, and you don't necessarily always want to have characters by any means at either end of the spectrum. There's all those shades in between. And that character's voice is different from the author's voice. The author's voice encompasses the author's style of writing, their interests as seen in their writing, and any political or social views they might convey. So that's the heavy stuff. If we look at the slide that's up here now, it tells you of the best example that I could think of when I was thinking about this lecture and thinking about examples of great character voice. And the thing that came to mind, the book that came to mind, was Tim Winton's That Eye, the Sky. And the narrator is a boy whose name is Ort Flack. And Ort tells the story of his father's accident and time recovering from that accident. And he tells it through the vulnerable eyes of him as a sort of an 8 or 10-year-old boy, but also with a really big reliance on his sort of idiosyncratic language. He uses, language that's very Australian, so we get a sense of the place there. But all of this helps us get a sense of who Ought is, and his voice is, whenever you pick that book up, 100% clear. We know it's Ought telling this story. But I have actually been asked to provide examples from my own work, so I can't rely just on the great Tim Winton. So I'm going to read a little sample from 90 Packets of Instant Noodles, which is a book for young adults. I'm just going to read a few paragraphs from the opening pages. Craigs is the one who notices it as we swing past on our bikes. The garage door rolled up, the tools hanging in their special spots, power drills and an angle grinder. And on the workbench, there's a router, a couple of circular saws, the complete Sidchrome set. That's what I want. The rest doesn't interest me much. This, you open up and it has everything in there. Ring spanners for every possible job, all lined up in increasing size, and the sockets nestled into purpose-cut spots. We dump the bikes and head back. There's no one around. We watch for 10-15 minutes before making our move. Of course, it always a fucking ton, but we are in and out of that guy's shed in less than a couple of minutes, and the blood is pumping, man, is it ever? I sweat fear in those minutes. Craigs wants to do a second run to get the rest, but it's too risky. We run down the back lane behind the guy's house, loaded up to the max as it is. Anyone seeing us would realise what we're up to. We have to stash the heaviest stuff at a construction site a couple of streets down. We go back later on and shift it over to Craigs's place. But no one does see us. And at the end of it, I have the Sidchrome set. I kept it afterwards, after some junk in Dad's shed. I never used it, in case Dad saw me. I just opened it and looked at it sometimes. One day I'll change a whole engine using that thing. Craigs sold the rest of the stuff to some guy he knew and threw me $100. I didn't really want to get rid of it because I thought we'd be more likely to get busted that way, but Craigs wanted the cash, so that's what we did. That was about 18 months ago. It seems more like a decade. Okay, so they're my two examples on character voice, Tim Winton and mine from 90 Packets. So let's talk a little bit about author voice again. So for me, a great example is Peter Carey's book, Bliss. And I'm not going to read much, but I just want to read the opening line of the book so that you can see exactly what I mean about author voice. The book opens like this. Harry Joy was to die 3 times, but it was his first death which was to have the greatest effect on him, and it is this first death which we shall now witness. Only Peter Carey can start a book like that, and I think that tells us a lot about his style of writing, and there's a voice there that we can immediately get a sense of. Again, I have been asked to provide an example from my own writing, so I'm going to read to you from The Break, which is my adult book. Okay. So just to provide a little bit of background, the two main characters, Rosie and Cray, are looking at some real estate, a rental to lease down in Grays Bay, which is a fictional town in the southwest of Western Australia. How much is it? He tried to sound only lightly interested. This one's $150. Grays Bay's real estate is quite extraordinary, Shoulderpads said. People buy these places over the phone, sight unseen, and they're only fishing shacks mostly, hardly comfortable. They're all on rainwater tanks. It amazes me. The wooden house was at the bottom of a steep downwards driveway. On stilts, on tiptoe, the house faced the ocean. The bay curled at the bottom like a fetus. Hutt's Beach nestled calmly between surge and edge points. When they walked in, Cray passed straight through the house to a set of sliding doors that were moist and misted with salt air. He opened them to a veranda perching over a view so wide that it would need 4 or 5 photos side by side in panorama to do it justice photographically. He could almost make out the earth's curve at the edges of his vision. The water reached out ahead of him and away to the sides in infinite directions. Rosie came out and stood beside him. Cray, he knew she was grinning. Don't you want to see the rest of the place? So hopefully that gives you a sense of my voice as the author of that book. I also just want to read to you a tiny bit from John Marsden's book, Everything I Know About Writing. He has a really interesting take on voice, and I think it sums up how I feel in a great simple way of describing it. This book is a book that I use a lot when I go out to schools and run creative writing workshops. It's a fantastic resource for teachers. Anyway, John says, everyone has a different approach to writing. For me, the single most important thing is to get the voice of the characters. Once I've got that, I can usually start writing a book, even if I don't know much else. I might have only the vaguest idea of the plot, the setting, and the factual details of the character's life. But if I know how they talk, if I know the words they use and the rhythms and patterns of their speech, if I can hear their voice, then I'm ready to hit the word processor. And you can hear how old that text is by using the word processor instead of keyboard or laptop. Okay, that's John Marsden. So, as to recommendations for young writers who are trying to hone their skills in this area of voice, I do have some thoughts. Firstly, I want to say, let the character's own words be used. Use the first person point of view. This is a really easy way to allow that voice of the character to really come out onto the page. That character's own words are being used for his or her thinking and his or her speech all the time. Go with your gut instinct on how the character speaks and thinks. Don't autocorrect. The first words that come into your mind, pop them down. You can edit it later if it doesn't work, but I can almost 100% guarantee that first gut instinct feeling of what you should write is what you should write. Ensure your characters have distinctive voices. And to that end, I'll add that dialogue is your friend. Lots of dialogue. One voice can be heard much more clearly when it's contrasted with another. And of course, your reader can get to know the characters' personalities via this dialogue. Dialogue is also a fantastic way of keeping the pace of a story or book going along, ticking over. But in terms of voice, dialogue is critical, so use dialogue. Don't shy away from writing about painful stuff. To me, voice is about identity, and identity is about the personal journey. So sometimes it's good to go into the deep stuff. And finally, no writer gets it right the first time. Editing is vital, so expect it to be part of your process. Get it down, know that it won't be perfect, give yourself a chance, a day, 2 days, go back over it and sharpen it up. It's all yours.